everyone, this is Charlotte, and this is a podcast called Chatting and Doing Stuff. I'm currently on my way to work again. There's a disclaimer at the start of this podcast, because I do talk about sensitive topics, so if you don't want to hear any of that, skip this one. Go to a nice one about Teletubbies or something, I don't know. Also, I do swear a lot, particularly when I'm info dumping and hyper, caffeinated. So I suggest, if you don't like swearing, don't listen. The topic for today is right and wrong, which unfortunately goes in hand with common sense, and a lot of people don't have common sense. So if you don't want to hear anything about that, or you don't have a grasp or understanding of that, probably skip this one. Let me just fix that because it just slipped. Okay, that's better. All right, so knowing what's right and wrong comes from a multifaceted viewpoint, or multifaceted sources, basically. You've got to understand the context in which someone exists sorry, starter's kicking in. It's Thursday, my brain's fried. You've got to understand the context in which these people find themselves, where they view the creation and perpetuation of what they view as right and wrong. What is right and wrong? And without going into things like Foucault, and a few other ones I can't remember the names of, but I know the content of. People have a general grasp of what's right and wrong. It's based on their cultural influences as well as their internal indicators. Once you get to a certain age, whatever you've been sitting in or has been saturated into your psyche, and you should know whether you're committing good things or bad things. I'm not a fucking bus retard. Weird. It's the challenge for these people is to find a way to make the bad seem right. That's what they're trying to do, I think. When you find someone who's morally corrupt, it's usually because they've sat in an environment. And it's not a case of nature versus nurture, it's a case of nature and nurture. Some people have a natural predisposition to want to do what is considered socially wrong. Sorry, my stuff is really kicking in today. There is a natural inclination towards it. That's maybe based on chemical or structural parts of the body, maybe. With things like an overdeveloped amygdala. But it's also influenced by the cultural context or the social context they find themselves in. What has been, what might have been suggested by their internal psyche might have been reinforced by the external structures around them. No one knocking them down and saying what you're thinking or doing is wrong. We don't do that here. So we're not going to keep doing that there. Or at the same time, it might be a case of doing bad things out of necessity. Again, a cultural influence where they know it's wrong, morally wrong, but they have to do it, or feel inclined to do it because there is seemingly no better alternatives. And so they create these negative, these wrongs, and sort of manipulate them into grey areas where it's right in the right context. In that case, you need to start reasoning out what the ethics of the situation is. For example, stealing a loaf of bread to survive when you're broke as fuck and you can't feed yourself. Stealing is the wrong thing there, supposedly, socially. Because not only does it promotes, a lack of cohesion amongst the team members of the community. It's taking money away from maybe a business, and it messes up the prices of the other objects for people that are actually consuming them, because the prices get bumped up to compensate for this loss. Bearing in mind, I still think things like mass producers like Woolworths or Coles are actually quite evil, because they don't support the people in any way, yet we are subject to buying their shit because there are fewer alternatives at a cost to reward ratio. They generally, because they bulk sell things, it's cheaper. Whereas small business owners tend to have jacked up prices because they don't have the access to the bulk, buying the product overheads as an overhead. Sorry, I'm fried all today. So smaller businesses tend to pay higher fees, whereas places like Woolworths can buy cheaply at a bargain basement price and then add their cost on top. I don't like those. I do tend to buy from smaller businesses if I can. Like at the moment, I'm going a little bit crazy for the spud shed. But that's because I'm pissed off at Woolworths. And Coles has always been shit, so I don't bother buying from them. The moral code here right now is supporting local businesses. That's my perspective. Because the person who started that business is actually a local. Whether he's spread off to live somewhere else, I don't know. But it started at a grassroots level, and so I'm quite happy supporting his business. Whereas places like Woolworths, I don't even know if they're Australian owned at this point. They're God knows who's running that shit. But they don't mind marking up prices, which screws over people, and that spreads into businesses like Tesco's and Aldi and all kinds of things. We don't know where exactly it started or who's holding it right now, but we know that the prices are excessive, and they do a lot of waste. I've got into the I've been watching videos about how Aldi and Tesco's just chuck out food and stuff, and when realistically you could donate it to homeless shelters, you could, like food banks, you could do all this extra stuff with it, but they're not doing it because, you know, it doesn't benefit them. It should morally benefit them because it gives them some kind of a updo in the community because you're helping others, so they should be doing it. But I've been watching these threads where people just been chucking the food out instead of actually passing it on to where it should go. Possibly because it could drive up consumer demand. If people are able to get it cheaper, they won't be buying the product at cost or at whatever price that Aldi or Tesco sell it for the next day. So maybe they're just trying to keep the costs high. It just doesn't make sense morally, because you've got people starving who can't even afford it at cost. So why are you just not marking it down or putting some kind of label on it or something? I'm sure at one point they were doing yellow labels where people could get it, I don't know, for free after a certain time, and that would help the sort of homeless people. So in that case, they know possibly what they're doing is wrong by hoarding the food and chucking it out so no one can use it. And then there's like laws covering that people can't go down their bins and stuff like that, which I find ridiculous. It's like, it's literally going to waste. And if you try and rescue it and you go dumpster diving, as some people do, then you get in shit for it and you get sued or you get fined or some shit like that. It's ridiculous. Their excuse is that people are going to try and consume the expired food and then sue them for malpractice or some shit like that. Something like that. There would be a stupid thing like that. They're just trying to cover their ass. But at the same time, if you've put an expiry date stamp on the product and the person still consumes it past the expiry date, then you covered your ass that way. So there's no real excuse for just chucking things away and not using them. You're assuming people have common sense, but I don't know. If you're going to dumpster dive, eat the expired food and then sue the business for giving you expired food even though you ate it past dumpster diving, it's like, well, that's on you, buddy. That's where common sense factors in. Some people just don't have it. Obviously, you're not going to eat rotten food. This isn't the Victorian era where they just bleach it and say it's still good. So, common sense mixed with moral code. It's grey areas which create these problems where people try and make bad seem good. Plus, I feel there's an overall energy of, I don't even know when it started, to be honest. I can't backdate it. Where, doing the wrong thing is seen as cool, or all these images of bad boys. Oh, I want a bad boys. I don't want a bad boy, because bad boys make bad men and bad men make shit leaders. I don't want one. It fucks us all. There's nothing romanticized about this image of he's a rebellion. It's because you're not rebelling for any kind of goodness, no good noble act. You're just rebelling because you're a selfish turd. It's a case of I use people and I isolate myself because fuck everyone else. Some people isolate themselves because they are just done with the world. It's like, for example, I am. I isolate because I cannot be fucked dealing with other people's shit. It's not like I'm going to inflict some kind of damage on them. I just don't want to be around them. If I cannot reason it out, I'm not going to control their actions by trying to argue with them. I just take myself out of the equation and isolate. I cannot deal with this shit right now. I'm not going to try and control, manipulate, and get in them. It's to make them do what I want to do because I deem I'm absolutely right about this. There's no other alternative. It's just a case of, right, I tried, bye. And that's part of my moral code. That's my consideration of what should be right. It would be wrong to try and coerce and control and manipulate these people to believe what I believe. I mean, if you do, okay, that's weird, okay, because I'm a bit odd, but I'm not going to force your hand in doing something that you might not want to do. I find that in my books to be wrong. People come with their own, narrative and moral code and everything to begin with, which has been shaped by their surrounds and their own natural instincts. So why are we trying to force people into doing things? Doesn't make sense. It's weird. I find how people crave control. I suppose they crave control because they're afraid. They're afraid of what could be, which is ridiculous. No one ever knows for sure, and even the human condition is an abstract concept, so I don't know why you're afraid. I had this weird conversation with my ex-boyfriend one time because he was drunk as fuck. We both were. But I suggested that all things that we know as human constructs and reality is actually an abstract construct, wherein even the definitions we use to classify our existence is fake. It's based on what we assume is right, with no understanding what other people or other species or other beings might understand as right. What we know to be a flower could be something else in someone else's or another species' language. And because he was so stuck in his ways and he had to be right about this, and he was getting quite irate about this, he was getting really pissy about me even suggesting this, and I thought that was funny. Because he was very much about classifying things and exacts, and it has to be this. And I'm going, it's not. Even the words we use, the taxonomy we use is relative to our species. It doesn't mean anything realistically. And there's a bit of existential crisis going on, a bit nihilist in itself, but I found that funny. I love pissing off drunks. I said, no, you're wrong. I'm like, no, I'm right. I just like fucking with them. Because it's true. And in my sense, in my moral compass, it says that is true. It would be arrogant to assume that we are the be-all, end-all, and our methods and assertions are absolutely right. It would be absurd. We'd be incredibly arrogant as a species. It's like, no one's right. No one's wrong. It's all open to interpretation. Everybody do a dance and do a spin. No. Don't follow my orders. That's too much like control. Just fuck with them. In a hokey kind of sense, everything's a joke, so why are you not laughing about it? Because we know the greatest scope of things, we know nothing at all. I mean, that's Socrates. Have fun. Just don't hurt anyone. Don't be a dick. That's essentially what right and wrong comes down to. If you're looking at it in survivalist terms, everything we do is to perpetuate the species in a kind of way that doesn't harm anything or damage anything around us. That's essentially what the 4 principles of existing are. You wouldn't shit in your own nest. I'm not going to damage my surrounds knowing that I'll need it later, burning bridges. It's as simple as that. We've got so many idioms and things like that for right and wrong that people, they manipulate them to try and justify what they want to do. It's like, well, what is your ego saying? Your ego is saying that you need to wipe out a mass population of people. Why are you trying to justify that? Because you know it's wrong. It doesn't perpetuate the species. But and some asshole will turn around and say, well, I think this should occur in the future species. If you want to talk about it in a biological sense. I don't think this cultural group or this ethnicity or this, essentially, if you look into eugenics, it's a very big corruption of Nietzsche's principles. Nietzsche was just trying to suggest that maybe some characteristic traits would be better suited for the environments. He was building on Darwinism, essentially, which is also flawed heavily, but we're not going there. Again, relative human terms that just don't exist within the, it's all bullshit. It's some white dude trying to get paid. Think about it that way. It's all shit. Just someone want to be popular and famous. But you think about it, even Nietzsche was saying that some particular character traits would survive better in these contexts, so we'll promote those in terms of building an uber person or a superhuman. We should try and promote that. Whether he had some kind of malicious intent, Maybe, I don't know, given the context of the time where it was a very white supremacist kind of environment in Europe. We don't know. But then Hitler took it, for example, and he went nuts with it. He's saying, we're going to build the Uberman, the Uberman. We're going to eradicate all these little subgroups because they don't fit in with the what we deem as right. And of course, what was right was fucking horrible for everyone because it completely eradicated a whole bunch of people that were actually useful and needed. Even when you're crossbreeding ethnicities of people, there's greater things like immunity and stuff like that by crossbreeding. And it sounds so sterile, doesn't it? It feels inhuman just to talk about it this way, because they're still people with souls. But you'll get better characteristics by diversifying your populations. You'll get better health. You might get some duds because you can't control all mutations in genes, but you'll get a healthier population by crossbreeding them. So why would you try and wipe out a whole bunch of them? It doesn't make sense in terms of survival for the population in general. If you look back at the Neanderthals mixing with I think it was Homo erectus or something like that. I forget Darwinism, I'm terrible with it. I like looking at everything. It is perceived to be that the Neanderthals died out because they just got outbred by the slightly better or slightly more equipped to deal with that context and environment. Humans, essentially. It's just variation of humans. Although we still have the Neanderthal gene running down our veins, sort of thing. All of us have got it in us. Otherwise we wouldn't have existed at this point. So what was the right or wrong there? I mean, if you're talking about morality, it's like, should it happen or should it not happen? Were the Neanderthals considered the inferior species because they existed for ages on their own? They didn't need to crossbreed. They did it, and sort of evolution decided these traits are good. I mean, they didn't get wiped out in a genocide, but they were outbred. The traits that are considered Neanderthal traits were outbred because they weren't deemed appropriate for existing in that particular horrible environment, which was probably very arid and rough and not good. Whereas we don't have those environments these days with the introduction of things like perceived civilization. Our environment is quite soft and people get used to convenience and they're not willing to struggle for anything more than, reaching for a remote and things like that. And even then they'll fucking complain. So it's like, what traits are we trying to promote here? So, it's what is right and wrong. I'm not saying it was right that the Neanderthals got wiped out because they were still considered very robust and resilient for the environment they found themselves in. But in some cases, in particular contexts which changed, maybe over time, it was the population that bred with them and the traits that got passed along which helped survival. That's of course all theory. I'm not saying twist my words and go into some kind of weird nature mutation or manipulation shit where we sort of start, cutting out swathes of people. That would be ridiculous because we're missing the diversification of the population. What I'm saying is that some things occur naturally, and it was not just a case of massacre all the Neanderthals because they're ugly or something, perceived to be ugly, or perceived to be, evil people. It wasn't a genocide. It was a gradual breeding into a different format of person. Was that considered right or wrong? And looking at that experience, for example, in this context we find ourselves in, had it been a genocide that wiped out that population, we would have seen it as wrong because genocide in our era is wrong, and we know this. But had it been natural mutation of genes in which the characteristics were spread out and sort of diluted over the following generations, then it would have been perceived as okay because it's naturally occurring and these were favored genes and this is what the people wanted at the time, and it was in line with our values and natural, norms which we perpetuate in the current situation. Now, values and norms change over time. At one point, things like slavery were fine. Well, not fine, but, it was tolerated. And everybody got enslaved. It wasn't just a case of one particular ethnicity. Everybody over time got enslaved at one point. And you can look back at the different things like Sumerians and the Arabic people, who are now the Arabic people. It was someone else earlier. They had a different name in the past. The practice was deemed tolerant. You can tolerate it. Obviously not by the people who are having it done to. And only in this time and era do we understand that it is an incredibly evil practice, even though we have modern versions of it, like sex trafficking. We know it's evil and we've criminalized it. Do we go back to it? No, because in our times it's changed. We know now that it's not a good thing, it is inhumane, and no one likes it, so we don't do it. And we've criminalized it because we know that. So there are severe penalties for participating in these practices which were once tolerated. That's where I heard sirens. We know right and wrong. The thing is, what can we do to perpetuate the system where everybody's supported and included equally? That's what we're aiming for. And some moron in America will say, oh, you're a libtard. I'm going, you just found a new word and you want to use it as much as possible because it makes you feel superior to those around you, even though you're probably a little bit slow. You know? So you're a libtard. No, these are the basic foundations in which you find your current humane way of living. Your right to vote. Liberal. I mean, I'm not a liberal or a conservative. I'm a mix of everything. I look at everything and I don't pick one. Access to food, access to housing, healthcare, all these things that you consider libtard issues, you are benefiting from now. So I don't know why suddenly. I think it's the extreme aspects of it, like where it doesn't benefit the population on the whole. So things like furries, I think they're looking at that going, that's weird, and then they're blanketing everyone with it, which is just excluding, you know, a lot of the shit they're benefiting from as negative. So if you took all that stuff away from these people, would they still be annoyed? I mean, currently, you know, you're losing your healthcare in America and stuff like that, so, and the education system, and your prices are going up, so you're going to lose your food soon. All these kinds of things. Are they still going to be blaming the libtards? No, because look at the source. Go and look at the person who's controlling the traffic here. That's the absurd thing. These people, they don't understand right and wrong. They just jump on bandwagons. It's like, actually look at the ingredients to your cake, because right now it's turning out to be shit. Look at the ingredients. What did you put in? What did you encourage to put in? So the question of morality is I'm going to have to wind up soon because I'm really at work. It's based on nature and nurture. It's a moral code developed by the situation you find yourself in. Just as any kind of part of your narrative story, everyone's got a narrative. This is their life story, their life journey that they're going to share with other people, hopefully to teach lessons or to give information or to learn from, so they can reach some kind of enlightened state and pass on to the next life if they believe in reincarnation, or maybe get into heaven if you believe in heaven. Or maybe if you're an atheist, you're just going to float off into nothing and just don't exist. I don't know, that just borders on existentialism. Or nihilism. But it was like, but you know, it's the laws in which, or the moral code that we exist around other people, because we know that society has to perpetuate. It's the condition we find ourselves in that we need to address right and wrong in. It's like we need it to perpetuate in a healthy way where everybody benefits from existing within it. Otherwise you'll have societal collapse. Everybody will get damaged. Nothing will run properly, and we'll probably all lose the Wi-Fi, and I will shit my pants over that. I hate that shit. Hello, baby. I won't shit my pants. I'll be angry. But, you know, think about what you're doing. Is it ethical? Again, with ethics, realistically, and try and be objective about this, because a lot of people get emotionally involved in circumstances. You need to see what you're doing and the outcome, the ripple effect it could come with it. Foresight is severely lacking in the population right now, because you see a lot of people doing dumb shit and not expecting consequences. And it's a little case of life has become too convenient, and so we're used to surviving when we fucking shouldn't. If this was out in the wilderness and you did some dumb shit, you'd probably die. Whereas in a state of convenience like we're in now, where everything's supplied readily, no one has to hunt, no one has to... You're looking at, like, if you pissed someone off, you're not expecting a consequence, but you fucking should. I mean, it's not a case of someone will outright go out and, you know, either beat the crap out of you or murder you, but it's still, it builds a lack of cohesion amongst the people when you should be looking for alliances in order to survive the current political trends or the social context in which you find yourself. People are not forming alliances because they're too stuck in their ways of, I have to be right, this is what my morality says, fuck anyone else who fucking says otherwise. That's the problem. We're so blockheaded when it comes to being right that we're not willing to see alternative views of living or existence or reality. Is I have to be right, my experiences have said I'm right. So all of you are wrong, and I will. And often it leads to horrible experiences like people getting pulled into conscription, where some guy says I'm right and you're all going to die for me. Otherwise, you're going to die now in my, do it now or get imprisoned. And we remember what conscription was like with the, what were those people? It was like passive protest, but they said, I'm not participating. And so they all got imprisoned because they could potentially be spies or something. What are they called? Oh, there's a word for it. I can't remember, but it was in the Second World War. I think it was the Second World War. Oh, I'm going to have to Google it. My brain's fried. I'm going to have to leave it there as well because I've got work to do and it's right there. So if you're going to have a questionable experience pop up, I would suggest, first of all, looking at your internals. What does my moral compass say about this? But then also considering what other people are thinking or what it might turn into. Try and have a concept, an approach to hindsight. Think about what the ripple effect could be. Try and find the best way, the most ethical way to deal with that situation. Ooh, people behind me. It's really hot today. I'm so fried. So, bear in mind that you have to exist amongst other people. Those guys aren't going away anytime soon. So you're going to have to find a mid-ground between your belief systems and their belief systems. And preach tolerance, basically, because, there's no way around it. You have to participate. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to survive. Or you could go off-grid, which I admire as well, if you got the balls to. But at the same time, find an ethical way of dealing with any problems that arise. Because, if you don't find the right way to do it, and if you participate in the wrong way, sooner or later, you're going to get found out and fucked over. Because people will not tolerate bullshit for long. Take it easy. And I'll hopefully do a more coherent podcast tomorrow when I'm not heavily caffeinated and driving at full speed. I don't know what it's going to be. And I'll see you tomorrow.